Good morning. In our continuing discussion on Ayin Beis, conclusion of Ayin Beis, we are back to the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, which is the source material on which Ayin Beis, the end, is based upon. Page 384. So, whereas the Rebbe Rashab, last thing we learned was about the yichud of the two yichudim, in the words of the Rebbe Rashab, Shneim heim beposik echad, lamahava echad be'echad, that yichud tata is the same level of unity as yichud Allah. From God's perspective, for sure, but even we are expected to come to understanding, integrating, appreciating it to some extent. Like he said clearly, that also Neshama Yisroel tzrichim liyachid gam bezei yichudim. That we also have to do that, and that's the Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hashem Elokeinu is the higher yichud, Hashem Echad is the lower one, and they both come together in one verse. So the Mittler Rebbe continues, and what we began learning is the emphasis on the word Shema Yisroel. That is Dafki Yisroel, Ola b'machshava, because Yisroel, the Neshamas Yisroel, are rooted in the core, what he calls Primius Atzmis Elokus, of Elokus, higher than the Shtalshalus. That's why they have the capacity. Though every neshama is just a small spark, but it's a small spark of the divine soul rooted in that high level, that to unite, yaskil v'yasig v'izbeinen, he says three things: to conceive, to comprehend, and to contemplate. The davar zeh shalamayla mishtalshel is the save of a mamala. To contemplate that which is beyond ishtalshelus. So all of existence is part of existence. But a neshama has a DNA, has in its very wiring, something that comes from the very source prior to the Big Bang, prior to existence, and therefore can contemplate on that level, which is where the two yichudim come together. So to use an example that I've used in the past, think of someone who is a father, wants to build a home for his child. So he builds this mansion, a palace, with all the rooms and all the needs and beyond that his child will have. The intention in all of it, of building this structure, is not as an end in itself. It's for his child to move in and live there and fulfill his mission in life, which includes using that, creating that building to be a home for the divine, for godliness. I'm already going to the nimshal. So what's the nimshal? God created a very complex and comprehensive world. That's existence. That's Seder Shtalshlus, and has worlds in it, and those worlds have many dimensions, and there's 10 spheres in each world. And then in this physical world, look, we have Daimim, Sameach, Chai, Medaber, and in each one of them, many, many species, multitudes, millions, billions, trillions of details. And the purpose of it all is Chai Vodem Lemer, B'shvili Nivra. The person is responsible to say, the whole world was created for me, not in an indulgent and arrogant way, but on the contrary, in a responsible way, for you to elevate. And then on the sixth day of creation, Hashem puts his crown jewel, the human being, the only one created in the divine image. Now, it was all created by God. And it's all rooted, as we said, from God's perspective, it's all the Hisavis, is all an expression of Atzmos. But it is the Neshama that has the power to reveal that. So that's the ambassador that Hashem invests and infuses by Yipach, Ba'apav, Nishmas Chaim, the Tzelem Elokim of the human being, or what he calls here the Nitzutz Kotten of the Neshama, of the Nefesh Elokis, to come into this world. and reveal this unity, not just unity, the highest levels of unity. So the purpose of existence is not existence itself. The purpose is in order to turn it into Adira B'Tachtenim. So as elaborate and as comprehensive the world is, Yisrael Olam Machshava, what is rooted in the core, Pnimis Asmis, of the architect of, in this case, Elokus, that's a neshama. And that neshama, because it's rooted at the very purpose, it is able to transform the building, the structure, and unify it with the divine, with the highest levels of the divine. The building itself can't do it itself because it's a process, it's a product of the creator, of the producer. And like we learned, it's infinitely distant, but the neshama has in it extra resources. So besides being a creation, we also have this divine power that Hashem invested in the neshama. Okay. So now it's going to continue and it's going to explain. So what does the neshama, what is Shema Yisroel? What is Yisrael supposed to hear and understand? Like we learned Shema from the Lashon, from the word Havana. Shema means to hear, means to understand, to appreciate. So what do we say? Shema Yisroel. Then comes the continuation. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So what is it that Yisrael does? So let's continue reading line 4. Line 5, I should say. The top paragraph, second paragraph on page 384 of the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer Mika Hashem Elokeinu, and the pages can be found at ayimbeis.com. So he says, "V'hu masher omar or masher kosav Havaya Elokeinu dafke." So Shema Yisrael, the next expression is Havaya Elokeinu dafke. Hamiyuchad Eleinu. So he's now emphasizing the word Elokeinu, our God, not just Havaya Elokim. Shema Yisrael, Havaya Elokeinu. That it's Elokeinu dafke, Hamiyuchad Eleinu. It is exclusively unique to us, to Eleinu. Miyuchad means exclusive, but also miyuchad from the word Echad, but it probably means miyuchad Eleinu. Why? Bechinas Primordial v'atzmis. Like he said, the neshamas are rooted in the Primordial and Atzmis. So when we say Hashem Elokeinu, we're saying this is our Elokeinu, something we relate to personally, because Hashem, the neshama, is rooted in this highest place, so we can speak about God in this very personal way that it gave it to us exclusively. In the truest fashion, meaning in the purest fashion, the way it was before creation began. It was him, who, Hashem, and Shemaya and his name were the only ones there. So it's like the neshama can say, we were there before it all began, essentially. And that's what Hashem Elokeinu he's teaching. I want to just look in Teda Eir. When he brings Shema Yisrael, he also brings Havaya Elokeinu. I just want to see if it's hinted to there at all, this expression. Let me just see something. 1 second. No, it's actually a diak of the Mittler Rebbe, because Elokeinu there, he teaches in Teda Eir as Mamala Kalalman. Elokeinu meaning it relates to Elokeinu, to existence. Here he's teaching Elokeinu is that we related higher than existence. It's not a contradiction. They both are included in the word Elokeinu. Just wanted to look it up to be as precise. Okay. In Ayin Beis in 1466, I don't think he's medayik on this at all. Let me just see. I don't think so. Because there he doesn't even talk about Shema, really, the word Shema, Yisrael. There he just says Hashem Elokeinu is bittul b'mitzias. Okay. So this diuk that he said before Yisrael Olam Machshav at the top of the paragraph, he's now teaching in Hashem Elokeinu, Hamiyuchad Eleinu b'chinas mitzvos k'mo sheyahu shmei belvad. And what do we say? That this Hashem Elokeinu is Hashem Echad. Havaya zeh this Havaya Elokeinu, which is Elokeinu all the way before existence, is Hashem Echad. Zeu Echad. Bli shinui klal. B'shem Havaya zeh ben kedem ishtalshlus. Well, let me read a little slower. So you say now, this Havaya Elokeinu, that the neshama relates to, that's miyuchad eleinu from primis ve'atzmus of Ein Sof, that's Hashem Echad. It's one with Havaya Echad without any change. The Shem Havaya doesn't go through any shift. It's exactly one, like we said, it's the yichud of both yichudim. Blishum shinui klal b'shem Havaya zeh. So we say Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the same Hashem that is Elokeinu, higher than Ishtalshlus, is that Hashem is Echad within existence. Ben kedem ishtalshlus, there's no shini between Havaya as it is before Ishtalshlus. The Chochma Midas, the Dibur Machshava, or maybe Dibur Maisa, I should say, probably. Not Dibur Machshava, Dibur Maisa. That once Ishtalshlus begins of Chochma and Bina, Chochma and Midas rather, emotions, and Dibur and Maisa. You're talking here, Machshava, Dibur and Maisa. Most likely what Vav Dalad Vav men is Dibur and Maisa. Memaitzil, La'atzilus, from before the Ishtalshlus of these spheres, from the Maitzil, from the emanator to the emanation to Atzilus, Atzilus Libiyah, and from Atzilus Libiyah, La'achakach. So, though the Havaya is now coming down into existence, into Seder Ishtalshlus, there's no shini between Havaya, it's Havaya Echad, exactly as it was Havaya Elokeinu before Ishtalshlus. The Gama Sheba Ishtalshlus, yeah, for sure, Dibur Maisa, because remember earlier he spoke, the Mittler Rebbe, that creation comes through Dibur, which is already God expressing himself to another, and Maisa, which actually building something outside of himself, so to speak. So he says that also that which comes in the Ishtalshlus, Dibur Maisa, because these are koyches nivdolim. Machshava is still connected to the one that's thinking. But Dibur is already something that's expressing outside of yourself. And Maisa even more so. So even though it's coming down to Koyach Nivdal, who gam ken bli shinui klal lifnei mehusei v'atzmusei mamish. Shalamayla mebeis deis hanal. Even as it comes down into existence, like we said, even the highest, the divine comes down into the lowest levels, engaging with existence, it remains completely intact. Bli shinui, like we said, not ditfus. He's not contained or defined by it. But mehusei the guy lifnei mehusei v'atzmusei mamish. Shalamayla, that's higher than both days, Das Tachten and Das Elya. So that's how he's teaching Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, which essentially the last line that we learned in Ayin Beis, he says also, Shneim Heim B'Posuk Echad, Hashem Elokeinu is Yichudi Lo and Yichudi Tata. Yeah. Yichudi Lo is how the divine higher than existence is one with Hashem Echad, of the divine within existence, Yichud Tata, without Shinui. So what he said now is really very much the last lines in Ayin Beis, with more detail a little. Any questions before I continue? I mean, he's going to elaborate on this more, but it's far from finished, but just if anybody wants to clarify anything. Okay. So continuing on, and so too is it, that also that level of divine energy that comes in a transcendent fashion. As the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that Seva v'makiv doesn't mean surrounds, as the word implies. It means it's above, not revealed. So a sense like hovers. So it's within, but it's above. As opposed to Mamalaklam, which relates, that we can relate to. So it's Seva v'makiv. So also the level of Seva v'makiv, the midas v'chochma bina. So even the Seva v'makiv of the emotions and of the intellect, chochma bina, shalamayla min adibur ma'aseh. So we're talking now the thoughts and the ideas and the emotions behind the speech and the action. Dibur ma'aseh is already asara ma'amoris nivra elam, is already God expressing Himself. I want to have Yehi Yehi Rakia. Maisa is the creation that it produces. But behind that lies thought, lies thought, and lies Chachma, Bina, and Midas. And then there's the save of a makif of Midas and Chachma, Bina, the transcendent dimension of it all. Shahu, this makes up the word Echad, Ach Dalid. So Ach Dalid is Aleph Ches Dalid. I'm assuming that's what he means. But how does that fit with the makif in this? Let me just think for a second. Let me just read a line afterwards. Harihu ba'achdus pshuta ba'atzmis amalkum ekedim sheitzel. Okay. I think what he means to say, the Dalid seems to be maybe refers to Dibur, like Dalid is Dibur. And maybe the Aleph Ches is referring to the Chachma, Bina, and Midas. I'm not sure. Bottom line, it's referring to Echad. So he's saying Havaya Echad, which means that also the save of a makif of the Midas Chachma, Bina that's higher than Dibur Maisa, Shu'ach Dalid, Harihu. So even as it comes in Havaya Echad, it's one. It's Hu Ba'achdus Pshuta. So Echad, we know from the Gemara, it says Echad is Aleph, is Alufish Shalelam, Ches is the seven heavens and earth, and Dalid are the Dalid Ruches, the four directions, north, south, east, west. And we say Echad means that the Aleph of God permeates the structure of existence, the seven heavens and earth, and the four directions, space. That's what usually how we teach it. It sounds to me that he's teaching Ach Dalet is referring to a higher level than the heavens and earth, referring to the way Elokus is manifest within existence through Midas Chachma Bina, which is high. So I'm not sure if Ach Dalet goes on Dibur Maisa, or it's going on how Chachma and Bina are permeating Dibur Maisa. That I'm not sure about. It's not clear. It's too brief. But regardless, he is talking about the level of Seviv Umakiv, the Midas Chachma, that's higher than the Dibur Maisa. So I'm not sure whether Echad is the lower level or it combines both. But at the end of the day, he's saying that even that also the Seviv Umakiv of Chachma, Bina, and Midas higher than Dibur Maisa, Harihu Ba'achdus Pshuta. It's not just the Echad that manifests within existence, it's exactly the same level of seamless unity. In the core emanator, like before he emanated. Here's another example where the Mittler Rebbe, the flow you see here, is so intense that it's hard to distinguish, like what did he say before, what's he adding now? It's all like almost like, I don't want to use the word run on, but it sounds like that, because when you read it, saying, 1 second, you just told us that the unity below is like without shinui, like the unity above. So what is he adding here? Saying the save of a makif of Meichen and Midas. Not very clear, but maybe it'll become clearer as we go. But this is again typical. And you see the Rebbe Rashab is very different in that sense. The Rebbe Rashab, it never does this. It never, like, he explains a level, then he explains another level. Here it seems to be like an overlap here. So it's like because also the higher wisdom and midas, which lies behind creation. Remember, Dibur Maisa is already the outer expression. Chachma midas, Chachma law midas is the inner faculties that are driving the thought, the speech, and action. So he says, because also the Chachma midas, ma'ayin liyesh, that are driving the creation ma'ayin from the ayin to the yesh, bli shinui hamachus klal. This happens without any change of the personality. It's all one from the point of view of atzmos. And therefore, from our point of view of the neshamas that are able to access that level, like we said, higher than ishtalshus, to appreciate this higher level of achdus. So here again, you would think he should have brought this verse earlier, and he did bring it earlier, many pages earlier. But here he's suddenly bringing it in here, when really he said that earlier, there's no shinui. So why is he bringing the pasuk now? So I don't know if you can read into it more than it is. It's just that by the Mittler Rebbe, it's flowing. So it's just like a flowing of ideas, and it's up to us to try to make some order out of it. So it's a near violation is who kamoi the kamei mamish ba'achdus pshuta betachlis. And just as the divine is completely seamlessly united with God in the achdus pshuta, so too is it kamoi. It's exactly that same way when it's down below in the process of creation, kamei mamish, just as it is in the achdus pshuta betachlis. So basically saying that the lower unity is exactly like the higher unity. They both join together on that higher level. Well, now what did he add here? Besides saying that it's also save of a makif of midas and chachma bina, which I'm not sure what he means by that, because you would think save of a makif is even higher than chachma bina, chachma midas. But he's saying that v'chein masha bo b'bechin save of a makif the midas chachma. Basically, the power of the divine within creation is the same as the power of the divine beyond creation. And that permeates all the levels, including the Dibura Maisa, including Chachma Bina and Midas, including the Makif and Save of Chachma Bina, all as it is in the Akhdus Pshuta of the highest levels. That's the punchline. That's the bottom line of everything he's saying here. Okay, I see now he's going to explain why he said it this way. The next line. He's going to explain because also Seviv, which is the Ratzon Hashem, is also a lower level than the Atzmi Dike Achdus. In other words, it's one thing to say that Dibra Maisa, the way creation is spoken and created, that's a chiddush to say it's one. But he wants to say that even the higher level, Seviv, is also not the highest level. Gam b'chinas Seviv Klal HaKloli, the Ratzon, v'chachmei law, because even the Seviv Klal HaKloli, the general Klal, which is Ratzon, God's desire. Remember, Ratzon is higher than Meichin, than Chachma Bina, and higher than Midas. So he's bringing together all the picture here. Dibra Maisa is the lowest level as it creates. That's driven by the emotions and the higher faculties, the emotions and the intellect, which in turn are driven by the Ratzon of the Makif and the Seviv. So he says also Seviv Klamen of the, which is the Kloli of the Ratzon of the Chachmei Law, Nimshach Ma'ayin Liyesh b'chinas Mitzias Dover. That also is part of an extension that God is extending his desire to go create Ma'ayin Liyesh. So it's also Nimshach Ma'ayin Liyesh, from the ayin that's higher than Seviv into the yesh of the Ratzon of Seviv. That's what it sounds like he's saying. B'chinas Mitzias Dover, Ma, because it's a Ratzon that's relating to existence. Like we learned, it's the Ratzon, I want to have existence. So it is already also a step away from the very core essence that is not relating to existence altogether. So there's some type of substance here, due to the ishtalshlus, that is part of that Ratzon is to manifest within ishtalshlus, berichuk mokim. So as soon as God said, I want existence, he's already gone to a space where he's relating to existence. So you would think that's a descent, and therefore some shinui happened. It's not quite like the Achdus that precedes existence. So it says, Aval ein bezeh shinui klal, k'may kodim sh'ala b'ritzeinei. There's no change. So even when he desires existence, and therefore relates to it, there's no change, just as it was before he wanted it. Which, of course, is a tremendous chiddush, because once you want something, you're now relating to it. It's not like you were before you wanted it. But that's by human beings, but not by Hashem. Canal, as we learned earlier, v'dai l'mev.
Can you also touch this as him saying that that the Bechinas Sov Makif, the transcendent godly energy, is also an expression of God? We typically don't see it that way because we typically think of Mamale as as the expression of creation, of existence.
That's exactly what you said now. That's exactly what we just learned.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so what he's saying here is like this, that in truth, he's really going from the bottom up. First, he began and said, Havaya Elokeinu is Havaya Echad, that Havaya Elokeinu, as it is higher than existence, comes into Havaya Echad as it manifests within existence. And so there's no difference between the Havaya, between before Ishtalshalus of Chachma Midas and Dibra Maisa, from the Maitzil, from the emanator to Atzilus, from the Atzilus to Biyah. So even though it comes down to Koyach Nivdal, but it's Bli Shinui, and then he goes on a higher level, that even the Rotzen for creation is also a descent, and yet it still remains without Shinui from the way it was before the Rotzen. So he's speaking here from the Rotzen to the faculties of Moichin and Midas through Dibra Maisa, and now he's speaking that the Rotzen itself for creation is also one with the way the Rotzen was before creation, prior to creation. And that's what he means by the Makif. And it's all Bli Shinui, Havaya Elokeinu, Havaya Echad, which most likely would mean that Havaya Elokeinu, he types as being Elokeinu Miyuchad, the higher level. Before he types in other places, he types Havaya Elokeinu as in Teda I think there's very much a diuk in Teda, because in Teda he says, Havaya Elokeinu is that Pirush Elokeinu who in yourselves b'chinas mamalaklam v'sevu klamen who nimsha mebchinas Havaya hoya hoya v'yeh ein sof ayin v'hazal. Yeah, I think that the Mittler Rebbe's explanation here is explaining 6 lines from the bottom on page 38b in Teda. Yeah, I'm convinced of that now. Havaya Elokeinu. So Elokeinu, Havaya hu Elokeinu means Havaya Elokeinu. That Havaya Elokeinu, that the Havaya, as it is, because iron. Yeah. The Havaya that's higher than existence goes into the Havaya within existence. So you see how important that he's emphasizing here. He wants to make sure that the divine that relates to existence, which is ultimately going to be related to the animal soul and the body and so on, is one, ultimately the yichud is one with the yichud of the Havaya as it is before creation and existence. Havaya Elokeinu, Havaya Echad. That's what he's saying here, yeah. So it's an explanation of the Torah with more details. V'nimtza. So what do we derive from this? Pirush HaPosha Havaya Elokeinu, that the simple meaning of Havaya Elokeinu, Shema Yisroel Havaya Elokeinu, Hainu, means like this: the Havaya sheba'atzmus u'primis ein sof. That the Havaya as it is, like he said, Actualize nivra hayahu v'shmei belvad. The Havaya as it is, in the core and inner dimension of Ein Sof, kamoshu mamish, exactly in that same state, preserving its pure integrity, kamoshu mamish, that gam, it retains that level. Gam kishenimshach lamata begili. Also, when it's drawn and extends down lamata in a revealed way, kamei b'ishtalshlus. Shuma ayin liyesh mamish b'bchinas mamala v'seviv. So it retains that level as it comes down to ishtalshlus, which is coming down from ayin to yesh, because ishtalshlus compared to the higher levels is a yesh compared to the ayin. As it comes mamish into the yesh, b'bchinas mamala v'seviv, in a state of mamala, which is the divine energy within existence, and seviv is like the rotzen that relates to existence, but it is a makif, it's seviv. So that all is exactly the Havaya as it was completely higher, Moshu Mamish and Atzmis Mahus, to the point that you say Havaya Elokeinu Mamish, Achanikra Havaya Elokeinu Mamish. So now he's teaching Elokeinu before he touched Elokeinu Miyuchad Eleinu, that it's unique to us because we come from that higher level. Now he's teaching Elokeinu like he's teaches in Torah to the point it's so integrated that it's called Elokeinu, our God, Mamish, Shesheda Begili Pnimi, Bekalim Ben Neshamas Yisrael. So Havaya Elokeinu, he's saying the simple meaning is that the Havaya, that's beyond, completely beyond, exactly as it is there, becomes ours, meaning internalized and integrated, that it's Mamish Elokeinu, and it dwells, Begili, in a form of a Pnimi, an intimate internal energy, Bekalim b'neshamas Yisrael. So when we say Shema Yisroel, Havaya Elokeinu, Yisrael, the neshamas Yisrael, is saying that the Havaya, even the highest levels, is residing in Elokeinu, in the Kalim, internally within us. It doesn't remain beyond us, and it retains its pure integrity as it was beyond us. So the beyond has become within, which is, of course, the combination of paradoxes. And that's the Kel Deus Havaya. That comes because the Atzmus joins the two together, and now Yisrael are able to bring that in to Shema Yisroel. That's our power of the Neshamas Yisrael to achieve that type of integration. Makol Mokim. And though it comes internally, Ein Bei Shinui Klal L'Klal. There's no shift, there's no change at all. Absolutely no change. Shema'ayin liyesh zeh ein a nivdal klal. That though it's ma'ayin to yesh, because there is a yesh of existence, it's really ein a nivdal klal. It's not separate at all. Klal klal. Again, he says twice klal klal, not unequivocally not separate. Ma'agdus pshuta da atzmis. From the seamless unity of the core, that's beyond existence. Af sheba b'richuk mokim de parse. Even though we know it came, as we said, from our perspective, it came through a leap. There was a shift, a richok mokim, from the ayin to the ayin through the parsa. The parsa was a partition that created a leap, so the yesh could emerge. But canal, like we learned, not just a reflection of a reflection. Im kol zeh, nevertheless. Hashem Echad hu mamish. So Havaya Elokeinu becomes internal. It's still Hashem Echad. So that's the addition of the Echad. It's still one mamish. Lamato kameshu lamayla b'mehus va'atzmus or b'mehus va'atzmuse. So the Echad is mamish lamato one, exactly as it is above. Imehus va'atzmuse mitamanal, for the reason we discussed earlier, because the Eibush is beyond both of them. The ma'ayin liyesh hazeh, hainu ma'ayin mamish, because this ma'ayin liyesh means now ayin mamish, the ayin amiti, which is the ayin of the yesh amiti. Kamoy de kameya atzmus the ein sof. So even as the ayin comes into the ma'ayin liyesh hazeh, hainu ma'ayin mamish, so the ayin that comes into the yesh is just like the ayin mamish, the way it stands before atzmus ein sof, which is completely nullified. The Gamsha Seva Mala Kamoy Bezayin Rekim Ba'oretz. And now he does bring that interpretation. That's also Seva V'Mamala. Now he's comparing Seva Mala to the seven heavens and earth. Remember I said Ches. Maybe that's what he meant, Echad. Ach Daled. So the Ach would be Aleph Ches, which is the Alufish. Ches is the seven heavens and earth. He now seems to be interpreting heavens as Makif, Seviv, and earth as mamala. That's, I think, what he meant before. So now he's saying that also save mamala. Like I said again, this is the flow. Why didn't he say it earlier? I don't know. But he's now tying it all together. So ein shinui ve'erech klal. So also as it comes into the seven heavens and earth, to save mamala, the rotzen and the pnimi, ein shinui ve'erech klal. There's no shift, no change at all. The erech, interesting word that he would use here. Ein erech means that there is nothing in comparison. That means that even while it's engaging in existence, it still remains completely purely divine. That's what he means. Ein shinui ve'erech klal. The gam b'shah shenitfes be'er pnimi u'makiv. That even when the divine manifests in internal energy, and a makif in a rotzen, which is not internal, but he is manifesting in it. It's his rotzen for creation. Less machshava tfisa beklal. Even while he's containing it and defining it, no thought can contain him. The Einze Beis Hofkim canal. And they're not two opposites. By God, there's no paradox. For us, it's a paradox. But from that level, it's not two Hofkim kalal, the Dal. It's not two opposites because they become literally like one. He's completely within existence and completely beyond existence. That's the point from Atzmus. And Shema Yisroel, that Yisroel are accessing that and contemplating and internalizing and appreciating that level as much as we're capable of, as we've been discussing. So you see here a very strong contrast to how the Rebbe Rashab style and language and the Mittler Rebbe. But when you learn them both, it becomes a lot easier to understand the Mittler Rebbe, frankly. If you just learn the Mittler Rebbe, it'd be a lot harder to work it through. You have to go much slower and it's more complex. I mean, I can tell you that. Learning the Mittler Rebbe is always very overwhelming in that way because the sentences, there's such a flow. You feel more oyer than kalim, to be honest. The Rebbe Rashab, the Eris and Kalim, are a lot more measured, so things are structured and more dispelled out and defined. But it's not. It's still everything is here, except it's you need to work it through. So that we've just worked through this paragraph, not so easy language-wise, but the content I think is very, very clear because it's exactly what we're learning, what we learned in Ayin Beis with more elaboration. Okay. And it's interesting to see when the Rebbe Rashab quotes actual lines from Mittler Rebbe and when he doesn't. Like paragraphs like this, he doesn't really quote. He rewrites it in his own language. There are paragraphs, however, that the Rebbe Rashab quoted directly from, actually cites the actual language that I pointed out earlier. Okay. So we'll stop at this paragraph now and stop for questions. And then we continue.
Rabbi,
any questions? Yes.
So it's like Hashem, from Hashem's perspective, it's both happening all at once, but also in different, from like, it includes our perspective of how we have to delineate everything in time and in space. It's happening both ways from Hashem's perspective, all at once.
Well, yes, if you're able to visualize something beyond time and space, it's all in there. But it does include, as you said, how we see it as well. But the real focus here is not really purely how Hashem sees it. It's how we can appreciate how Hashem sees it.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, this is being told to us because the objective is for us to try to understand all these aspects going on. Look,
right.
This requires, as I pointed out, for example, when you look at a cup of water and you know some of the scientific elements at work here. So you see water, you drink it, and it quenches your thirst. At the same time, you know it's made up of H2O. You also know the H2O, the hydrogen and oxygen, are made up of atoms and atomic structures that in turn are made up of subatomic and sub-subatomic. Deep down the rabbit hole you can go. All happening at once. It's all the same thing, the same cup of water. So how do you explain all those parallel realities? The answer is we can't think in terms of linear time and space. You have to think of it dimensions. Existence is multidimensional. Now, when you add into the equation the spiritual, then you know in that same water, you'll also find Asiya and Yetzirah and Bria and Atzilus and the Makif. He talks about the Rotzen, Keser, all the way back to the highest levels, all the way back to before the Tzimtzum, all the way back to how it all originates in the Creator, where it's all some type of, hard for us to fully imagine, one seamless unity. And it's all one from his perspective. As you go down, obviously it breaks down because the recipient, or we, the observer, is only seeing what we see. Some people see the water, put it under a microscope, a drop of water, you can maybe see some of the molecules. And as you go further, sometimes you can't even see it with your eye. You have to extrapolate and imagine it in the atomic and subatomic. In the spiritual, it goes obviously even deeper. So all this is really dissecting existence. So we begin from the tip of the iceberg, and then we learn it's not a tip. It's not a tip of the iceberg, it's an iceberg. We only see the tip, as I've been emphasizing. And you continue the journey. Each of us is going to take the journey in a different way. Each of us right now has a different way of seeing it. The more time you spend, the more experience you get in learning Chassidus, the more you can relate to the more amorphous, if you wish, and the more subtle and sublime levels as high as one can go. The Rebbe Rashab and the Mittler Rebbe are talking here the highest levels, literally. So don't be surprised. It's not going to be so easy to wrap your head around. I would suggest you begin where you can begin. That's why I'm giving these examples. You start with where you're at. If you try to jump to this place, you can try, and you can try to use your brilliant mind, but it's not brilliance that's needed here. It's experience. It's experience. The more you experience the divine as it relates to us, you cannot, for example, understand atoms if you don't understand molecules. And you can't understand molecules if you don't understand elements. You can't just jump from the water all the way to the subatomic quantum level. I mean, you could, but you're going to miss and really appreciate it until you don't see all the building blocks. So you have to see them and then slowly deconstruct it until you get to the core essence of it. So when he says core essence of the unity, you're talking now the purest form. Look how difficult. Let's take the example I often give. A one cell upon conception. So father and mother conceive of a child, of a new life. In the beginning, one cell, an egg has been fertilized by a seed. It's now conceived. You have a cell that is a viable cell, which will split into two after 18 hours, and then split again into 4, into 8, 16, 32, 64, etc., etc. And that's just 9 months of pregnancy, of the gestation, of the cell developing. At some point, at the late first trimester, you're going to start seeing something starting to take shape. Second trimester, third trimester, you actually see a child. It's a miracle. Besides the fact, how did it leap from a seed and an egg into a cell? How did it get from one cell into all these cells? And now you actually see a head, a heart, a body, arms and legs begin developing. I mean, each in its stage. Your mom is seeing Seder Shtalshalis developing, and you don't have to go back to the Big Bang. All you have to do is follow 9 months of pregnancy. And today there's images, but it's not even the images, it's just the understanding, the developing. So someone will say to you, here we are. We are 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. I don't want to go too high. 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds. Yuval is just turned 80. I don't know if he's here, so we'll say Mazel Tov again on his birthday yesterday. So here you have an 80-year-old man, a 70-year-old woman, a 60-year-old, whatever. And you say to yourself, what am I in comparison to that one cell when my parents conceived, when I was conceived with obviously the third partner, Hashem, who gave the neshama? How do you compare? How do you see this adult with all our complexities and all our issues and all our therapies and all our traumas, and you compare it to that one cell? How hard is that to really comprehend? Very hard. It's almost like impossible to see. How can we see ourselves? And if you looked at that one cell, would you see everything that would become of you? Obviously not. Forget about your life experiences, even what you look like. I mean, you could say your DNA, your genetic makeup is hereditary, so somewhat like your parents, but I'm trying to point out, and this is all in the physical reality. Even the one cell is a physical reality. Now imagine now taking it into the spiritual dimension. We're not even talking about anything tangible. Even though one cell is also barely like a hair, like a strand of hair. I don't know how small it is. It's minuscule, but it's still physical. Now leap over to the soul level, to Asiya Ruchnius. I talk now Asiya Gashmis, and then go to Yetzirah, and then go to Bria and Atzilus, and all the way up where he's talking here. It's almost mind-boggling how it's almost like how in the world are we ever going to understand it? But the answer is, if you go step by step, and maybe that's why we say Shema so many times a day and every day, because every one of them should maybe be leading us to a deeper understanding of Hashem Elokeinu and Hashem Echad. But as you go, and the more you contemplate, you'll see the more the picture emerges, and you begin to relate to the more abstract levels. So the fact is, he's talking here definitely the highest levels. He's going all the way to Havaya Elokeinu. He says Havaya Kedem Shenivra Elam, before existence. We're not just talking about before conception of a child. We're talking about before conception of all of existence, and before even the spiritual conception, and even before the desire of existence, the desire. We're not even talking about the creation. There's just the desire to create. But Chassidus, as I said, wants it all. It wants a total relationship with Hashem all the way to these highest levels. And that's what we're addressing here. So I just wanted to put it, lay it out. I think I've said this maybe in different words, but driving the point home of what we're really talking about here. And that's the ultimate yichud, when you can connect the first step, that very small tip that we do relate to, even the physical, and connect it to each level, like we learned earlier, Hamayrich be'echad. Remember, Hamayrich be'echad. That you elaborate on echad. Hamayrich is a big word, means arichus. How long is that elaboration? How long do we have to contemplate? Doesn't say, there's no limit. I mean, the Gemara says until, it says, it gives us some shiurim. But the truth is, from a Aveda point of view, there's no limit. You continue to elaborate until you start getting it. And as you grow, the horizons become broader, and you begin to relate more to the abstract. And then ultimately, existence will look very different from that perspective than when we began the journey. But it won't annihilate the beginning either, because it's still all part of that one reality. So where each of us stand in this, that already is something we would have to pause here, and each of us could make a presentation. Tell me how you see existence, how you see it now that we learned Ayin Beis and these Maimorim through the eyes of God, and how you'd like to see it as we go forward. That would be, if I was really doing this in a real workshop form where we're engaging on that level, then it would be a requirement that each of us would have to make a presentation. Tell us how you saw existence yesterday, how you see it today, what have you learned, and really speak from the heart what your real perception of the world is. Chassidus is trying to give us a new way of looking at existence. Not a way that eliminates existence, just a new way of looking at it, ultimately through the eyes of God. Question is, what level of the divine? Is it Atzilus? Is it higher than Atzilus? Is it, like you said, Dibur, Maisa, Dibur, Chachma Bina Midas, or all the way to Ratzon, or all the way to even the highest levels, which is what he's getting to, where everything becomes one seamless whole.
I have some really small questions after that very deep, eloquent explanation. First of all,
one second, I just want to finish with Robin.
Sorry.
I know this always she provoked this, so I just want to say, hopefully this was somewhat helpful in this conversation.
Absolutely, that's so helpful. You have to be able to ponder these different things, the details that we're going into before as part of where you're trying, where the destination is. I guess the destination being to really get as close to Hashem as possible. So we can't just jump, like you say, but it's very helpful what you said. Thank you, Rebbe.
I'll just add one more thing before I take more questions. Keep in mind that we're talking here step by step. We talked Aveda, Medarga, level by level, from the bottom up, step by step, what we call Seder v'Hadraga, an orderly progression. Aveda al pitam v'das, and then this. This does not preclude that from time to time we will get an epiphany or a revelation, and this could be on a Shabbos, on a Yom Tov, on a Yom Kippur, on a Purim, or a Simcha, or just God is graceful, and then you just sense something. So it doesn't mean that it always goes one little baby step after another, but ultimately the steps are critical if you want to integrate it. Because even if you have an epiphany, we all know an epiphany can be a momentary inspiration. It doesn't mean you've really owned it. So I just wanted to add that. You can sing a niggin. Chasidim sing a niggin when they daven, when they learn Chassidus. The niggin sometimes fortifies or ratifies, or as the word resonate, helps resonate the idea that you just learned. A niggin takes you to another place. You feel it, not just understand it. So keep in mind that we have plenty of tools, not just pure intellect. Many of tools, loving another person, doing a mitzvah, Ahavas Yisroel, sacrificing yourself for another person. All these things help us integrate, internalize this journey. Let's put it that way. Just wanted to add that into the equation. At the end of the day, we are learning Ner Hashem Nishma Sadam. We're going to learn about Ner Mitzvah. Neshama gives us that power, our souls. Then we're going to learn Ner Mitzvah Torah. A mitzvah and Torah contribute to it. Our leaders contribute to Einei Ha'eda, the Malachim that we learn. So we have many siyua, many forces that help illuminate this, even though fundamentally the soul is connected, like we've been learning. But when the Shema comes down below, the eye cannot see in a dark room without an external light. So there are many supports, and that's the whole Torah and mitzvahs actually, and each other. A Seilach Harav, having a Rav, a Mashpia, a mentor, a friend. All these things come to contribute to this journey. So it's really the journey, the real purpose of our existence. Just wanted to round it out with that. Okay.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very beautiful. Lovely explanation of Judaism in general. I have, like I said, some very small technical questions. First of all, in the fourth line from the bottom, where it says, Im kol Hashem echad hu mamish lamata kmo shehu lamayla b'mehus atzmo. Why does he say with a bet, b'mehus atzmo, instead of meh, with a mem?
Because he's talking in that level, not from that level. He's saying that it's Echad Mamish as it is in Atzmus.
Got it. Thank you very much. Second question is from what you said on the Gemara on Hamarich Be'echad. What does it say about how long? The technical rule about how long are you supposed to say Echad Barichas?
Until you feel that the God's sovereignty in the heavens and earth. The exact lashon ad. It's earlier. He actually quoted the Gemara. Let me see. Ad amlichte, I think, b'shamayim v'aretz is a lashon, something like that. Let me find it.
He says it. The Middle Rebbe says it.
No, the Rebbe Rashab actually.
Oh.
I'm looking it up. I'm looking it right now.
Maybe b'shmaya or be'aro.
Right. Adam lichte b'shmaya ba'ara. That's expression. Now, what does that mean? That needs some discussion.
Can you tell me where that is?
Yeah. I'm looking right now. Here we are. 1 second. Was it earlier or later?
Amlich is with an aleph?
Yeah, with an aleph. You're doing a search?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know where it is more or less. I'm just finding the actual page. Okay. Anyway, why don't you go to the other questions? I'll find this.
I asked all my questions for now.
Oh, okay. Some reason I'm not. Yeah, 1 second.
Ad amlich as in to crown, aleph mem.
Yeah, okay. It's right here. Top of page 1442. kad amlichte l'mayla l'matal dal ruchas elam su leit sichas. And more than that, you don't need. At top of page 1442. And then again, a little later, I think, I have to find it where it is. What's it? Yeah.
Oh, Cod. Oh, it's because it's Cod Amlichte. I was thinking it was odd with an ayin. That's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I remember this now that you pointed it out.
Yeah. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay. Yeah. It began on page 1421. That's where he began. Yeah. There we go. 1421. Kadam lichtel ma'lamata sulet sichus. Yeah. Echad zayin akim ba'aretz and so on. As a matter of fact, I believe that those ideas that are spoken about now in the Mittler Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab already spoke about it earlier. He just quoted it earlier. I want to go back there and study it before I.
I guess I do.
I'll get back to that later. Okay.
I guess I do have one more question. This contemplation of Echad, the Yichud of Yichudim. So we talked about it, the idea of being in the zone to be able to grasp that. I think you also said it's sort of l'mayla mitam vidas because it's sort of a paradox. So you can't really intellectualize this. You can to help you get to the zone, but you can't fully grasp it intellectually because it's a paradox. So is it fair to say that this getting to this yichud is more than just a mental an intellectual contemplation? You have to try, you have to do that, but it's not enough. Is that fair to say? You can't grasp it solely by thinking. Like is that correct?
Well, didn't did you hear me speak about Nigunim song and
but I'm just clear. It's a point.
Torah and mitzvahs.
It's a question of clarification.
All of Judaism, it would like be saying whether Judaism is only about intellect. Obviously, the mind is a very powerful tool, and the mind can bring you, just for the record, even the mind can understand things that are beyond what we consider right now logical. Look, quantum mechanics and science has proven that you can understand things that are counterintuitive and actually some would call illogical. So not everything, even logic itself, I wrote articles and spoken about, is logic logical? Not so simple. What is logic exactly anyway? Is it just the parameters that we grew up with in our culture? So the fact of the matter is that even the mind can be expanded to understand things that right now you would think are crazy ideas. And then, so that's number one. So even the mind can grasp things that are not graspable. Additionally, there are many tools that we have. We have the heart. The expression is less machshava tfisa beklal. Then it says, iyu tofis b'ru'usa deliba. Our desire from our heart can grasp God. He doesn't talk about that here. So there's a lot of tools involved here, including expanding the mind to places. Because at the end of the day, there are those Hasidim that did work hard, and their minds do understand this place of beyond paradox, where many of us would just see it as a paradox, and we can't grasp it. What he's saying is, on our own, we can't grasp it, which means, just like Yesh Ma'ayin, when we start off, all we see is a very little part of reality. But as we grow, we can begin to contain even higher levels, and we can even contain and understand in a way that which is not understandable. There's expression tachlis hayediyah shalei neda. The ultimate of knowledge is not knowing. So some interpret it means that the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. But then the Chassidus explains that you actually begin to know the unknowable. You can actually articulate the inarticulate, to express the inexpressible, to define the undefinable, and so on. Because at the end of the day, remember, God joins both. He's not just undefinable. He's also created the defined. By him, the definable and the undefined, the indeterministic and the deterministic are one. That's the hard part to get to, but we can with the mind and with other tools. It all depends. There's many levels of this experience. I would say you need to use all your tools: the mind, the emotions, the intuition, our feelings, our sense of things, and so on.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So we stop here at the end of the paragraph 384, bottom of the page.